That morning, a carton from an unknown resort sat on my doorstep. Inside lay a glossy album titled Couple's Retreat, filled with photos of my husband holding another woman's waist. He had claimed he was stuck in meetings for 12 hours that day, yet there he was, toasting champagne by an infinity pool. I closed the book without shedding a tear. If he wanted to believe I was oblivious, I would deliver a presentation at that very resort he would never forget. My name is Adeline Reed. I am 32 years old, a customer experience analyst at Luma Vista Insights, and until 10 minutes ago, I believed my life was a perfectly calibrated spreadsheet of mortgage payments, shared calendars, and suburban tranquility. I stood in the foyer of our townhouse in Westford, Colorado, the cool air from the closing door still brushing against my ankles. Outside, the FedEx truck rumbled down the street, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy and expectant. On the entryway table sat a square cardboard box. It was innocuous enough, the kind of standard packaging that arrives at our doorstep 3 or 4 times a week containing household essentials or online shopping, but the return label stopped me cold. It read, Silver Cove Resort, Couples Retreat Photo Album. Beneath that, the recipient line was printed in bold, cheerful letters, to Mason and Adeline Reed. I stared at the label. I had never been to Silver Cove Resort. I had never been to any resort with Mason in the last 4 years. Mason, my husband of 3 years, had just returned 2 days ago from what he called a grueling strategic offsite with his biggest client, HelioCore Strategies. He had come home exhausted, complaining about endless breakout sessions and sleepless nights spent reviewing quarterly projections in a windowless conference room. I reached for the kitchen shears I kept in the junk drawer. My hands were steady. I sliced through the packing tape with a singular, fluid motion. Inside, nestled in a bed of pristine white tissue paper, lay a heavy, hardcover book bound in cream-colored linen. Gold foil script across the cover read, Sweet Memories at Silver Cove. I lifted it out. It smelled of expensive ink and new paper. It was a beautiful object, the kind of premium upsell product resorts push on honeymooners and anniversary celebrants. I opened the cover, expecting perhaps a mistake. Maybe they sent the wrong file. Maybe this was a generic marketing brochure sent to a database of potential clients. The first page proved me wrong. There, printed on high-gloss archival paper, was Mason. He was wearing his favorite white linen button-down, the one I had ironed for him the night before he left. The sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing the watch I gave him for his 30th birthday. But he was not in a conference room. He was standing on a beach at golden hour, the sky a bruised purple and orange behind him, and he was not holding a laser pointer or a tablet. His arm was wrapped around the woman's waist in a flowy sundress. Tessa Marino. I knew her face. She was a marketing associate at his firm. We had met at 2 Christmas parties. She had told me once how much she admired my organization skills. In the photo, she was leaning back into him, laughing with her mouth wide open, her hand resting familiarly on his chest. The caption beneath the photo was printed in an elegant, looping serif font, Mason and Tessa. Sunset toast. I did not gasp. I did not drop the book. My heart rate did not even spike. Instead, a peculiar sensation washed over me, like plunging into a glacial lake. It was a sudden, clarifying coldness that numbed the edges of my vision and sharpened the center. I turned the page. There they were again, Mason and Tessa at a candlelit dinner, Mason feeding her a strawberry. Caption read, A Taste of Paradise. I turned to another page. Mason and Tessa in an infinity pool. At night, the water illuminated turquoise, fireworks exploding in the sky above them. His hands were on her face. Her wet hair was slicked back. They were kissing, not a peck on the cheek, but a deep, consuming kiss that spoke of months, perhaps years, of familiarity. My mind, trained to analyze data and find patterns, immediately pulled up a contradictory record. I remembered that specific night. It was last Thursday, at 8 in the evening. Mason had sent me a text message. It was a photo of an empty boardroom with a half-erased whiteboard. The text had read, Still stuck here. The client wants to redo the entire Q3 strategy. Miss you. I wish I was home with you and a pizza. I looked at the fireworks photo. The timestamp of the metadata, had I been able to see it, would likely have matched his text perfectly. While he was typing that lie to me, he was likely waiting for the pyrotechnics to start, his arm around Tessa in the warm water. I flipped to the back of the album. The final spread was a collage. One image stood out. Mason was lying on a plush chaise lounge, wearing nothing but a white resort towel around his waist. Tessa was beside him in a bikini, holding a cocktail. They looked relaxed, sated. They looked like a couple who had not a worry in the world. Certainly not a wife waiting at home in Westford who paid the mortgage and ensured his cholesterol medication was refilled on time. I placed the album gently on the granite kitchen island. The silence in the house was no longer empty. It was screaming. I picked up my phone. It was 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. Mason would be at his office, likely wrapping up for the day. I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, babe, is everything okay?" His voice was normal. That was the most terrifying part. It was the warm, slightly distracted voice of the man who kissed me goodbye every morning. "Hi," I said. My voice sounded flat, even to my ears. "Just checking in. Are you going to be home for dinner? I was thinking of making the pot roast you like." I heard the sound of typing in the background. "Oh, Adeline, I am so sorry," he said, producing a convincing sigh of fatigue. "I am absolutely swamped. That offsite generated so much follow-up work. We are in meetings until at least 8 tonight. I will probably just grab a sandwich here. Don't wait for me." I looked at the photo of him in the towel. "Meetings," I repeated. "You are in meetings all day. Wall to wall," he confirmed. "It is brutal. But hey, gotta pay the bills. Right?" "Right," I said. "Gotta pay the bills. I will make it up to you this weekend," he promised, his voice dropping to that sweet, intimate register he used when he wanted something. "Love you." "Okay," I said. "Love you too." I ended the call. I did not throw the phone. I did not sweep the album off the counter. I stood there in the afternoon light, feeling the temperature in my chest drop to absolute zero. He was lying. He was lying with the ease of someone who had done it 100 times before. He thought I was the safe harbor, the naive administrator of his domestic life who would never question the hard-working executive husband. I opened the camera app on my phone. Systematically, with the precision of a crime scene investigator, I began to photograph every single page of the album. I made sure the lighting was clear. I captured the captions. I captured the faces. I captured the Silver Cove Resort logo on every page footer. He thought he was safe. He thought the resort was a sealed bubble where reality did not apply. He thought he could have his wife and his girlfriend and his meetings without the worlds ever colliding. I closed the album and slid it into the center of the dining table, perfectly aligned with the placemats. "He said he was in meetings all day," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "Fine." A cold smile touched my lips, one that felt foreign and sharp. "Let us see how he presents his strategy when the entire boardroom sees these slides." Tomorrow morning, Mason would wake up thinking he was the master of his universe. He would wake up in a world he thought was secure. He would not realize that the meeting had already started, and he was woefully unprepared for the agenda I was about to set. For 3 years, our marriage had a neat division of labor. Mason was the kite. I was the string. He chased quarterly targets and client acquisition costs. I handled everything else: mortgage, birthdays, appointments, dinner. I remembered vividly when he first mentioned the Silver Cove trip 2 weeks ago. He had been standing in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone with a deep frown etched between his eyebrows. He told me that the client insisted on this flashy resort for their strategy retreat. He had complained about it with such convincing irritation. He said it was going to be a nightmare of forced socialization and windowless conference rooms. He told me he would be trapped inside while the sun was shining, crunching numbers while everyone else enjoyed the amenities. I had felt a pang of sympathy for him. I had even packed extra headache medicine in his toiletry bag because I knew how fluorescent lights triggered his migraines. Now, sitting in the dim light of the living room, that memory felt like a physical blow. When the front door unlocked at 8:15 that evening, I did not move from the sofa. I had placed the album, now closed and back in its box, on the side table. I had decided to run a test. In my line of work, we call it A/B testing. You present a variable and observe the user reaction to determine the truth. Mason walked in, bringing with him the aroma of the cool evening air and his expensive cologne. He looked tired, but there was a subtle spring in his step, the residual energy of a man who had spent the weekend feeling adored. "Hey, babe," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. He came and kissed the top of my head. "Sorry I'm late. The emails just kept coming." I looked up at him. I forced my facial muscles into a neutral, slightly confused expression. "Welcome home," I said softly. I gestured vaguely to the box on the table. "Something weird arrived today, a package from Silver Cove Resort. Did they send it by mistake?" I watched him. I did not blink. I needed to see the micro-expressions, the split-second flicker of panic before the mask slid into place. For a split second, his eyes widened. His gaze darted to the box, and then back to me. It was there. The fear. But it vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a boisterous, dismissive laugh. He walked over to the fridge and grabbed a bottle of sparkling water, turning his back to me. "Oh, that," he said, his voice easy and loud. "That must be the marketing package. The resort sends them to all the corporate attendees. It is probably just stock photos of the facility and maybe some group shots of the team and the client. I told them not to bother sending it to the house, but their CRM system is aggressive." He took a long sip of water, then turned back to face me. Leaning against the counter, he looked relaxed. He had decided I was too simple to open it. Or perhaps he truly believed the resort would only send the safe group photos to a home address. "I have not opened it yet," I lied. "I thought it was strange since you said you were working the whole time." "I was," he said, shaking his head with a martyr-like expression. "God, I barely saw the sun. It was just meeting after meeting. Do not overthink it. Addie, it is just junk mail. We can toss it." He walked past me, his hand brushing my shoulder dismissively. "I need to hop on the laptop. Expense reports are due tomorrow, and I need to make sure I bill the client for every single coffee." I did not argue. I did not scream that I had seen his tongue in Tessa Marino's mouth. I did not throw the box at his head. Instead, I let a soft, naive smile touch my lips. "Okay," I said. "I will leave it there for you to look at later. You must be exhausted." "Dead on my feet," he agreed, already heading up the stairs to his home office. The moment he was gone, the smile vanished from my face. It was like a light switch being flipped off. I took my laptop and sat at the dining table. I did not feel like a wife anymore. I felt like an auditor. I opened a new spreadsheet, Silver Cove Timeline, XLSX, and created a folder SASIN, Work Trips. 4 columns: date, stated reason, alibi, reality. I started with the most recent trip, date May 12th to May 15th. Stated reason, Heliocore strategy offsite, alibi meetings all day, working dinner, bad Wi-Fi, reality sunset toast with Tessa, infinity pool fireworks, couples massage. I closed my eyes and mined my memory. I pulled up our text history on my phone and laid it next to the computer. I scrolled back months. Every time he had gone on a business trip, there was a pattern. The trips to Denver, the workshops in Santa Fe, the sudden need to fly to Phoenix for a site visit. I cross-referenced his flight times. On 3 separate occasions in the last 6 months, he had told me his flight was delayed, giving him an extra 4 hours before coming home. I logged those times. 4 hours was exactly enough time for a leisurely dinner and a hotel room visit before driving back to the suburbs. Then came the financial audit. I logged into our joint credit card portal. Mason was careful, usually using his corporate card for travel, but we had a shared rewards card that we used for points. He often said he used it for incidentals, that he would reimburse later. I filtered the search for Silver Cove trip dates. There it was, May 14th, a charge for $350 at the Gilded Lily. I opened a new tab and searched the restaurant. It was the resort's fine dining establishment, offering a 10-course tasting menu. The timestamp was 8:30 in the evening. At 8:30 that night, Mason had texted me, "Just ordered a club sandwich to the conference room. This presentation is killing me." I entered the data into the spreadsheet. Expense $350, claim club sandwich, reality tasting menu for 2. I scrolled down. May 15th, the morning of his departure, a charge for $400 at the spa at Silver Cove. The itemized receipt, which I could view because the merchant had detailed reporting, listed the service as the romantic oceanfront package. My stomach did not churn. My hands did not shake. The coldness that had settled in my chest earlier had solidified into ice. I was looking at a mathematical equation of betrayal. He had used our shared money I contributed to buy romance for another woman, all while telling me he was suffering for our future. I worked for 2 hours. I built a comprehensive timeline that spanned the last 8 months. I found small charges at coffee shops near his office on Saturdays when he said he was going into work to catch up coffee shops that were nowhere near his building, but conveniently close to Tessa Marino's apartment complex, which I found listed in the company directory online. When Mason finally came downstairs at 11 o'clock, he found me watching a cooking show on the television. The laptop was closed. The spreadsheet was saved and password protected. "Still up?" he asked, yawning. "Just winding down," I said. "Did you finish your expense reports?" "Mostly," he said. "It is such a hassle categorizing everything." He walked over and kissed my cheek. It felt like a brand, a searing mark of disrespect, but I did not pull away. I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. "You work so hard for us, Mason," I said, my voice dripping with a sweetness that felt toxic on my tongue. "I do not know how you do it." He patted my arm, his ego visibly inflated by the praise. "I do it for you, babe, for us." He believed it. He truly believed he was the hero of this story, the hardworking man juggling a demanding job and a demanding mistress, managing it all with superior intellect. He thought I was just the background noise, the appliance that kept the house running. I closed my eyes. "Go, Mason," I thought. "Keep thinking I'm a fool. Keep thinking I am too busy with the laundry to notice the arithmetic of your life does not add up." I had my data, I had my timeline, and I had decided on my strategy. There would be no crying. There would be no screaming matches in the kitchen. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me emotional, because emotion would give him a chance to manipulate me. I would be the wife he thought I was, a little dim, a little boring, completely unthreatening right up until the moment I destroyed him. Naomi Keller was the person you called when you wanted to find a digital ghost. We had been roommates in college, back when she was hacking into the campus dining system to give us extra meal credits. Now, she was a senior cybersecurity analyst for Cobalt Lock Investigations, a private firm that specialized in corporate espionage and high-stakes divorce settlements. She had told me once, over a bottle of wine, that people leave digital fingerprints on everything they touch, no matter how often they clear their browser history. I met her at The Grind, a small, industrial-style coffee shop near Lakeview Plaza that smelled of roasted beans and ozone. It was quiet, the kind of place where people wore noise-canceling headphones and typed furiously on high-end laptops. Naomi was already there, her face illuminated by the blue glow of her screen. I sat down and slid a manila envelope across the scratched wooden table. I did not open with tears. I did not ask for a shoulder to cry on. I spoke the language she understood. "I need a network security audit," I said, my voice low and steady. "I suspect there is a breach in my home Wi-Fi. Someone is using the bandwidth to upload large media files from locations they claim not to be visiting." Naomi stopped typing. She looked at the envelope, then up at my eyes. She did not ask about the weather or my job. She leaned back, crossing her arms over her black leather jacket. "It is Mason, is it not?" she asked. It was a statement, not a question. I nodded once. "I have physical evidence. Now I need the digital trail." I reached into the envelope and pulled out 3 printed photos from the Silver Cove album. I placed them face down on the table. Naomi turned them over. She studied the sunset toast, the infinity pool kiss, and the date stamps I had annotated in the margins. Her expression did not change, but her eyes narrowed slightly, like a predator spotting movement in the grass. "Sloppy," she murmured. "He thinks because it is a resort. The data stays on the island. Rookie mistake." She spun her laptop around. "I set up your router 3 years ago when you moved in. I still have the admin backdoor access because you never changed the default keys I gave you. Do not look at me like that. I told you to change them, and you said you would forget them." "I am glad I did not," I said. Naomi's fingers flew across the keyboard. Terminal windows popped up, cascading streams of green text scrolling faster than I could read. "Okay, I am in the router logs. I'm looking at MAC addresses for connected devices. Here is his iPhone, his iPad, and his work laptop. He has auto backup enabled for photos and messages whenever he connects to a trusted Wi-Fi network. That is our door." She paused, tapping a key rhythmically. "Here's the thing about iMessage and cloud backups. Even if he deletes a thread on his phone, if the backup runs before he deletes it, or if we can intercept the packet stream during the sync, we can mirror the data. I can set up a script that copies every incoming and outgoing packet from his MAC address to a private server I control. Think of it as a wiretap, but for data." "Can you retrieve old messages?" I asked. "If they are in the cloud archives, yes. If he deleted them locally but they exist on the server, yes. Give me 10 minutes. We sat in silence as she worked. I watched the progress bar on her screen. It was clinical. It was precise. There was no emotion in the code. Just ones and zeros that would dismantle my marriage. "Done," Naomi said, turning the laptop to me. "I have created a mirror directory. Anytime his phone connects to your home network, it dumps a copy of his new data here. I also pulled the archived chat logs associated with his Apple ID. It is all in this folder." She pointed to a directory named simply Project Glass House. "Go home," she said, closing the laptop. "Let him connect to the Wi-Fi. Wait for the sync. Then read." That night, the air in the house felt heavy, charged with static. Mason came home late again, complaining about a conference call with the London team. He kissed my cheek, loosened his tie, and headed straight for the shower. "I am going to wash off the day," he called out. "Do not wait up." I waited until I heard the water running. Then I went into the guest bedroom where I had set up my laptop. I logged into the secure server Naomi had given me. The screen refreshed. Sync complete. A folder appeared. Messages. Mason's iPhone. I clicked it. The interface looked exactly like the messaging app on a phone, but it was a read-only list. I scrolled past the mundane threads: his mother, his fantasy football league, me, and then I found it. A contact saved as Tessa. Offsite. I clicked the thread. The timeline stretched back 8 months. I read the messages from last night, while he was supposedly in the shower at the resort. "Mason, just escaped a boring meeting. I wish I was back in that cabana with you. Tessa. The view is not the same without you blocking the sun. Are you sure she does not suspect anything Mason Adeline know? She is busy with her spreadsheets. She thinks I'm the hardest worker in Colorado." I felt a cold flush of heat rise up my neck. I scrolled back further. February. The trip to Denver for the regional summit, Mason room 412. I ordered the champagne. Tell the front desk you are Mrs. Reed. March. The workshop in Santa Fe. Tessa. I love this city. Thank you for taking me here. It is much better than the office. Mason, anything for you? We deserve this break. There were photos too. Selfies of them in hotel robes. A picture of Tessa wearing one of his dress shirts, holding a room service menu. A video of them driving a convertible through a desert landscape, laughing, the wind whipping their hair. I was seeing my entire life rewritten in real time. Every moment I had felt proud of his dedication. He had been dedicating himself to her. Every time I had defended his long hours to my friends, I had been providing his cover story. I reached the bottom of the thread, the most recent exchange from just a few hours ago. while he was driving home to me. Tessa, I miss you already. It feels weird going back to reality. What if she sees the credit card bill for the spa mason I told you? I handle the finances. She just pays the mortgage. Adeline is naive. Tessa, she trusts me implicitly. Do not worry. You are the only one who really knows me. Adeline is naive. The words seemed to pulse on the screen. Naive. It was a dismissal. It was a pat on the head. It was him reducing my entire intellect, my career, and my devotion to simple-mindedness. I sat back in the chair. The sound of the shower filled the hall. I could hear him actually whistling as he dried off. He felt safe. He felt superior. He thought he was playing a game of three-dimensional chess against an opponent who did not even know the rules. I closed the laptop slowly. Naive, I whispered to the dark room. A plan began to crystallize in my mind, sharp and jagged as broken glass. He wanted a partner who understood his work. He wanted to blend his professional life with his romantic escapades. Fine. If he thought I was too naive to understand what a meeting really was, I would show him. I would organize a meeting so comprehensive, so detailed, and so public that he would never be able to look at a conference room the same way again. I got up and left the guest room. I went downstairs and poured myself a glass of water. When Mason came into the kitchen, smelling of soap and deception, I turned to him with a smile that did not reach my eyes. "Feel better?" I asked. "Much better," he said, grabbing an apple from the bowl. "Nothing like a hot shower after a long day of strategy." "I bet," I said. "You know, Mason, you work so hard. I was thinking maybe I should get more involved. Understand your world a little better," he chuckled, taking a bite of the apple. "That is sweet, babe. But it is pretty boring stuff. You would be asleep in 10 minutes. "Maybe," I said, turning off the kitchen light so he could not see the look on my face. "Or maybe I would surprise you." The Stonebridge district was a part of the city I rarely visited. It was a canyon of steel and glass, populated by people who wore suits that cost more than my first car. Naomi had sent me an address for a building that looked like a jagged shard of ice piercing the sky. On the 42nd floor, behind frosted glass doors embossed with the name Hines Associates, sat the woman who was going to help me dismantle my marriage. Valerie Hines did not look like a shoulder to cry on. She looked like a weapon. She was in her 50s, with silver hair cut into a sharp bob that could probably cut paper. Her office was white, pristine and devoid of personal clutter. There were no photos of children or dogs, only a panoramic view of the city and a heavy marble desk that looked like a tombstone. I sat down and placed a black USB drive on the cold marble. "Naomi told me you are the best," I said. "She said you do not just handle divorces, you handle extractions." Valerie picked up the drive, turning it over in her manicured fingers. "Naomi has a flair for the dramatic, but she is not wrong. What have you brought me?" "Adeline." "Everything," I replied. That drive contains 4 folders. Folder 1 is the Silver Cove evidence, including the full resort album and metadata from the digital library. Folder 2 is a financial audit of our joint accounts over the last 3 years, highlighting every expense that coincides with his suspicious travel. Folder 3 is the chat logs mirrored from his phone, specifically the threads with Tessa Marino. Folder 4 is a timeline reconciling his stated work schedule with his actual location. Valerie plugged the drive into her laptop. She clicked files silently for several minutes. The only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioning. Finally, she looked up, and for the first time, a small, appreciative smile touched her lips. "Usually," she said, her voice crisp, "I have to hire a private investigator to get 10% of this. You have handed me a smoking gun, the bullets, and a signed confession. This is not just a case file. This is an autopsy. I am a data analyst," I said simply. "I like to be thorough." "Good," she said, "because in the state of Colorado, courts aim for an equitable distribution of assets. That usually means 50-50. However, when we can prove dissipation of marital assets that implies spending community money on an affair, we have leverage. But leverage is not a guarantee. You want the house, correct? I want the house. I confirmed. I pay the mortgage. I planted the garden. He treats it like a hotel. I am not letting him take half of my equity to start a new life with her. Valerie leaned back, steepening her fingers. If we file for divorce today, he will fight you. He will claim the house is a marital asset. He might force a sale. We need to be smarter. We need to secure the asset before we fire the shot. She pulled a legal pad toward her. How are the interest rates on your current mortgage? 4.5%, I answered. We bought it 3 years ago. Rates have dropped slightly, she noted. Here is the strategy. We have not filed yet. Instead, you approach him with a financial opportunity. You tell him you have found a way to save $400 a month by refinancing. You tell him it is a no-brainer. Men like Mason, men who think they are the smartest person in the room but are actually too busy chasing skirts to read the fine print, love the idea of free money. He will never read the paperwork, I said. He hates administrative tasks. Exactly, Valerie said. We will prepare a refinancing package. It will be thick, standard bank documents, disclosures, insurance forms. Buried in the middle, on page 19 or 20, will be a quitclaim deed or an interspousal transfer deed. We will frame it as a restructuring of the title for liability protection or to secure a better rate based on your credit score alone. Effectively, he will be signing his ownership of the property over to you, leaving him solely with the debt obligation until the refinance closes in your name. I felt a pause in my chest. It was a cold, calculating move. It was deceitful. Is that legal? I asked. If he signs it voluntarily. Valerie raised an eyebrow. Absolutely. It is his responsibility to read what he signs. If he trusts his wife to handle the boring details while he is off working, that is his negligence, not your fraud. I looked out the window at the city below. I thought about the $350 he spent on the tasting menu with Tessa. I thought about the thousands of dollars in flights and hotels, paid for from the account where I deposited 70% of my paycheck. He had been stealing from our future to fund his betrayal. Taking the house was not theft. It was restitution. Do it, I said. Draw up the papers. 3 days later, I was ready. I waited until 7 in the evening. Mason was in the living room watching pre-game commentary for a basketball game. He had a beer in one hand and his phone in the other, likely texting Tessa under the table. I walked in with a stack of papers about an inch thick, clipped together with heavy binder clips. I had already gone through and placed cheerful yellow sticky notes with sign here arrows on 15 different pages. Hey, I said, keeping my voice casual. I got that paperwork from Mountain Ridge Lending today. The refinance offer I told you about. Mason did not look up from the screen. Oh, right. The interest rate thing. Yeah, I said, sitting next to him on the sofa. I ran the numbers again. It is going to save us about $450 a month. That is over $5,000 a year. I figured we could put that toward the vacation fund. Nice, he said, taking a sip of beer. Good work, babe. I just need your signatures, I said, putting the stack on the coffee table. I have already filled out all the data. Name, social, income. You just need to sign the spots I flagged. It is mostly standard disclosures, truth in lending, privacy policy, the usual bank jargon, he sighed, finally glancing at the pile. Look at the size of that. Do I really have to read all that? I read it for you, I said, handing him a pen. It is all standard. I just need you to sign so I can drop it off at the FedEx box tomorrow morning. Unless you want to read it, I can leave it here and you can get to it this weekend. I knew exactly what button to push. Mason hated doing anything on the weekend that wasn't leisure or his work trips. The idea of spending his Saturday reading legal fine print was repulsive to him. No, he said, grabbing the pen. I trust you. Let us just get it over with. The game starts in 10 minutes. He started signing. Flip, sign, flip, sign. I watched his hand. It was the same hand that had held Tessa's waist in the sunset photo. Now, It was systematically dismantling his own safety net. Page 5, I said helpfully. Disclosure of intent, he signed. Page 12, I guided him. Credit check authorization, he signed. Page 19, I said. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. This was the one, the interspousal transfer deed. The document that stated Mason Reed was granting all right, title, an interest in the property to Adeline Reed as her sole and separate property. He paused for a microsecond. The page's title was in bold caps. Title transfer, he muttered, pen hovering. Yeah, I said, my voice bored. The broker said to get the best rate. We have to route the primary title through the applicant with the higher credit score tier for this specific loan product. Since my score is 810, it puts us in the platinum bracket. It is just a bank formality. Once the loan closes, it is all the same family pot. It was a stream of nonsense buzzwords I had rehearsed in the shower. To a man who thought he knew everything but actually knew very little about mortgage underwriting, it sounded plausible enough. Right, he said. Your credit score is insane. Mine took a hit after I bought that car. He scribbled his signature. It was done. He had just signed the house. He continued through the rest of the stack, signing 5 more times on various disclosures. When he reached the end, he dropped the pen and flexed his hand. God, my hand is cramping, he complained. They really kill trees for this stuff. Do they not? They sure do, I said, gathering the papers and tapping them on the table to straighten the edges. I felt a surge of adrenaline so potent it almost made me dizzy. I held the deed to my future in my hands. Mason turned his attention back to the television as the whistle blew for the tip-off. He reached out and squeezed my knee, his eyes glued to the screen. You are the best, Daddy, he said, chuckling. Honestly, I would be lost without you handling this stuff. I am completely blind when it comes to finances. I stood up, clutching the paperwork to my chest. I looked down on his head. Yes, Mason, I said softly. You really are. I walked to my office to lock the documents in my safe. He went back to cheering for his team, completely unaware that he had just lost the only game that mattered. The house was mine. The evidence was secured. The trap was set. Now, it was time to turn the resort his sanctuary into his scaffold. The next morning, I transformed my kitchen table into a command center. The emotional shock of the album had fully calcified into a cold, hard resolve to understand the logistics of my husband's double life. I needed to know exactly what he had bought, what rights we had to the images, and how the resort operated. I picked up the phone and dialed the number printed in small gold font on the back of the album. I had the booking reference number ready, pulled from the itemized breakdown of the credit card statement I had downloaded the night before. Silver Cove Resort, Guest Experiences. This is Chloe speaking. How may I assist you today? The voice was bright, airy, and sounded like sunshine. Hi, Chloe, I said, adopting a tone of slightly confused gratitude. This is Adeline Reed. My husband and I recently received a beautiful photo album from your resort. It was such a lovely surprise, but I confess, I was not entirely sure which package included it. I wanted to make sure we did not owe any final balance. Oh, Mrs. Reed, let me pull up that reservation for you. One moment. I heard the click-clack of a keyboard. Ah, here we are. You were with us under the Romantic Executive Escape package. No, there is absolutely no balance. That tier is all-inclusive. The Romantic Executive Escape, I repeated, writing the name on a legal pad. That sounds fancy. It is our most popular package for couples who need a mix of work and leisure, Chloe explained enthusiastically. It includes the 3-night stay in the oceanfront suite, the couple's massage, the private dinner, and of course, the memories photography session with our resident photographer. You get the physical album mailed to your home, plus full access to the high-resolution digital library on our portal. My pen stopped moving. A digital library. Yes, you should have received an email with the login credentials when you checked out. It allows you to download the images for social media or order extra prints. My husband handles the emails, I said, letting a little laugh escape. He is terrible at forwarding things to me. How would I access that? It is very simple, Chloe said. Go to silvercove.com/memories. Your username is the email address on file. The password defaults to the last 4 digits of the booking credit card. You can change it once you log in. My heart gave a single, hard thump against my ribs. Mason was arrogant, but he was also lazy. He used our joint email address for almost everything because he claimed it was easier for me to track the bills. He likely assumed I would never look for a resort login. Thank you, Chloe, I said. You have been so helpful. Enjoy the memories, she chirped. I hung up and immediately opened my laptop. I navigated to the URL. I typed our joint email. I typed in the last 4 digits of the Visa card. Welcome, Mason and Tessa. The screen is filled with a grid of 300 high-definition images. If the physical album was the curated highlight reel, this digital library was the raw footage of their delusion. I scrolled through the gallery, my eyes scanning the images with forensic detachment. There were the staged shots I had already seen, but there were also the outtakes. I clicked on a series taken near a hammock. Mason was lying back, his shirt unbuttoned, and Tessa was resting her head on his chest, her eyes closed in a performance of utter contentment. In another sequence, they were sitting at a beachside table, laughing hysterically. I zoomed in. They were wearing rings made of woven palm fronds and seashells on their ring fingers. I stared at the screen. They were play-acting. They were not just having an affair. They were role-playing a marriage. They were pretending to be the happy couple, free from the burdens of the real wife who paid the bills and managed the household. It was a mock wedding, documented in 4,000-pixel resolution. I continued to explore the portal. The interface was designed to upsell. There were buttons to order canvas prints, mugs, and calendars. Then, I saw a tab labeled Event Services. I clicked it. The page displayed a glossy brochure for weddings and corporate galas. One feature caught my eye: the Silver Cove Love Story slideshow. Let us tell your story. Our media team will curate a professional slideshow of your stay or your journey as a couple. Set to music, to be projected during your anniversary dinner, wedding reception, or group gala. There was a sample video. It showed a montage of a happy couple running on the beach, fading into shots of them drinking wine, all set to an acoustic guitar track. An idea struck me. It was no spark. It was a flash. Mason had told me that HelioCore Strategies loved this resort. He had said it was their go-to for strategy offsites. If they went there for work, and if Mason was the lead contact for the account, there was a high probability they would return. I opened a new browser window. I went to the Silver Cove corporate events page. I drafted an email, not from my personal account, but from my work email at Luma Vista Insights. My title, Customer Experience Analyst, sounded vague enough to pass for someone organizing a logistics trip. To Silver Cove Events Team, subject inquiry for corporate retreat with photo experience. Good morning. I am researching potential venues for a corporate retreat for our executive team and saw your facility came highly recommended. We are looking for a venue that blends professional meeting spaces with team-building experiences. I noticed you offer a slideshow service for guests, for a corporate group. Is this service customizable? For example, if we wanted to project a year in review or a team journey slideshow during a gala dinner, could we provide the content, or do we have to use your stock footage? We would want to mix professional headshots with candid photos taken during the stay. Please send over a proposal for a group of 20. Best, Adeline Reed. The reply came 20 minutes later. The sales director was eager for the business. Dear Adeline, thank you for your interest in Silver Cove. Yes, our AV team is fully equipped to handle custom presentations. The love story template is just a baseline. For corporate clients, we frequently build custom slideshows. You can upload any digital assets, photos, videos, graphs to our secure server, and our media team will arrange them into a professional sequence for your gala night. We can absolutely mix your provided content with photos our photographer takes during the retreat. I sat back in my chair. The puzzle pieces were locked in place with a terrifying click. The resort had photos of Mason and Tessa. I had access to those photos. The resort had a service designed to project images onto a 20-foot screen in a banquet hall, and the resort allowed clients to upload their files to customize the experience. All I needed was to get Mason, Tessa, and the entire executive leadership team of HelioCore Strategies into that banquet hall at the same time. I looked back at the photo of the shell rings. Mason looked so happy. He looked like a man who believed he could have two lives forever. "If you like the slideshow so much," I murmured, my finger hovering over the download all button. "Let us see how you like it when the audience isn't just you and your girlfriend." I clicked download. The progress bar moved steadily across the screen. 300 files downloaded. I was going to give Mason the meeting of a lifetime, and this time, he wouldn't be able to say he was stuck in a conference room. He would be the main event. The digital mirror that Naomi had installed on my laptop became my morning newspaper. Every day, I drank my coffee and read the latest headlines from my husband's secret life. It was during one of these routine audits that a new name surfaced, cracking the narrative that this was solely a grievance between Mason and me. Tessa had texted at 11 at night. "Tessa, I cannot speak now. Levi is suspicious. He asked why I have been working so many late nights. I have to play the good wife for a few days. Levi." I stared at the name. Until that moment, Tessa Marino had been a two-dimensional villain in my mind, a caricature of the younger, ambitious colleague. I had not considered the collateral damage. I opened a new browser tab and typed Tessa Marino Levi into the search bar. It took less than 30 seconds to find him. Levi Marino. He was a high school history teacher at Juniper Ridge High. His profile picture showed a man with kind eyes and a beard that needed a trim, standing in a classroom with a map of the world behind him. I scrolled through his public timeline. It was a wholesome mosaic of student projects, articles about civil rights movements, and hiking photos. And there, pinned to the top from 3 months ago, was a photo of him and Tessa at a dinner table. She looked bored. He looked adoring. Caption read, "6 years with my best friend. Here is to a lifetime more." My stomach turned. He was not just a husband. He was a believer. He was exactly where I had been 5 days ago, standing on the precipice of a lie, thinking the ground was solid. I debated for 2 days. Was it my place to shatter a stranger's world? But then I looked at the Silver Cove album again, at the smugness in Mason's smile. Levi was living in a burning house, and I was the only one holding a fire alarm. I created a new, anonymous email account. I drafted a short message. I did not offer sympathy. I offered data. Subject: "The truth about Silver Cove, Mr. Marino. You deserve to know where your wife actually goes when she says she is working late." The attached folder contains travel logs and photographs from a recent trip she claimed was for business. I am sorry. I attached the link to a secure Google Drive folder containing scans of the album, the timeline I had built, and a redacted version of the chat logs enough to prove the affair. But stripping out the most graphic intimacies, I pressed send. I waited. 24 hours later, a reply landed in the inbox. It was brief, devoid of the rage I expected. "Thank you for giving me the truth. I suspected, but I did not want to believe it. I need a few days to decide what I will do." He did not ask who I was. He knew. I was the other half of the equation. 4 days later, another email arrived. "Can we meet? There is a diner on Route 86 called the Rusty Spoon. Tuesday at 4. The Rusty Spoon was a relic of the 50s. Smelling of stale coffee and grease, I spotted him immediately in a corner booth. He looked thinner than his profile picture, his shoulders hunched under a gray flannel shirt. He was grading papers, a red pen in his hand, as if clinging to his routine was the only thing keeping him upright. I slid into the booth opposite him. He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, but his gaze was steady. "You must be Adeline," he said. "I am," I replied. "I am sorry we had to meet like this." "Better like this than finding out 10 years from now," he said. capping his pen with a precise click. He pushed a menu toward me, but neither of us looked at it. "How long have you known?" "A week," I said. "The resort sent a souvenir album to my house. They thought it was a romantic gesture." Levi let out a short, dry laugh that sounded painful. "Of course they did. Tessa loves resorts. She loves the lifestyle. I think that is part of the appeal with your husband. He represents the corporate ladder she is trying to climb. I am just a teacher. I cannot take her to 5-star oceanfront suites." "It is not about the money, Levi," I said gently, though I knew it partly was. "It is about the character." "I know," he said. He sipped his black coffee. "So, Adeline, you did not just send me those photos to ruin my day. You are planning something. I can tell by the way you organized that file. It was chronological. It was cross-referenced. You are not just angry, you are methodical." I appreciated his perceptiveness. "I am going to leave him," I said. "But first, I want him to understand exactly what he threw away. I want to expose them." I told him about the slideshow. I told him about the corporate retreat idea I was planting in Mason's head, about the customized love story presentation that Silver Cove offered. Levi listened, nodding slowly. He did not smile, but a glint of cold intelligence appeared in his eyes. "It is poetic," he admitted, "but it is risky. If you just humiliate them, they might spin it. They might say it was a one-time mistake, or that their marriages were already over. They will play the victims of a vindictive spouse." "What do you suggest?" I asked. Levi leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You have proof that they used company funds for this affair, right? The tasting menu, the spa treatments." "I have the credit card statements," I confirmed. "Mason put it on our joint card, but he likely expensed the flight and the room to Heliocore." "That is their weak point," Levi said. "Infidelity is a moral failing, but embezzlement, fraud, misuse of company assets, that is a career-ending liability. If we want to hurt them, we do not just attack their reputations, we attack their livelihoods." He lowered his voice. "Do not just ambush them at the retreat. Prime the pump. We need to send an anonymous package to the Human Resources and Compliance Department at Heliocore Strategies. Not everything just enough to trigger an internal audit. Send them the receipt for the spa day and the flight logs that match Tessa's off-site dates. Raise the red flag about financial misconduct." I saw where he was going. So when the retreat happens, Levi finished. "HR will already be watching. They will be looking for a reason to cut them loose. If they see that slideshow, if they see undeniable proof that the business trips they paid for were actually romantic getaways, it won't just be a social embarrassment, it will be cause for immediate termination with cause. No severance, no references. It was brilliant. It transformed my emotional revenge into a corporate execution." "You are scary for a history teacher," I said. "I study wars," Levi said simply. "I know that if you strike, you have to make sure the enemy cannot stand back up." We spent the next hour refining the plan. We agreed that I would handle the resort logistics and the slideshow, while Levi would compile the tip sheet for Heliocore's compliance officer. He knew the corporate structure better than I did, having heard Tessa complain about the strict expense policies for years. When we walked out to the parking lot, the sun was setting, casting long, melancholy shadows across the asphalt. It felt strange to be plotting the destruction of the people we had vowed to love. Standing next to a man I had only known for an hour, Levi stopped by his sedan. He looked at me, and for a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw the profound grief underneath. "I really loved her," he said quietly. "I would have given her anything." "I know," I said. "I felt the same way about Mason." "They made us into this," he said, gesturing between us. "We were decent people. Now we are conspirators in a diner parking lot." "We are just balancing the scales," I told him. He extended his hand. I took it. His grip was firm, dry, and cold. "Send me the flight numbers tonight," Levi said. "I will draft the letter to HR tomorrow. By the time they get to that retreat, the trap will already be armed." It will be a meeting they will never forget, I promised. I watched him drive away. A solitary figure in a sensible car. I got into my car and checked my phone. There was a text from Mason home late again. Don't wait up. I didn't feel the usual sting. Instead, I felt a sense of grim anticipation. Mason thought he was playing me. He thought Tessa was playing Levi. He had no idea that the two people he considered safe and boring had just authorized a joint operation that would leave him with nothing. I chose a Tuesday evening to plant the seed. It was the safest time. Mason was usually riding a high from his weekly department check-in, feeling important and influential. I sat on the living room rug with my laptop open, making sure the screen was angled just enough for him to see the glossy logo of Silver Cove Resort. That is strange, I murmured, just loud enough to catch his attention. Mason looked up from his phone. What is... My company, Luma Vista, I said, scrolling through a PDF I had mocked up using the template the resort sent me. We are looking at venues for the Q4 strategy alignment. The admin team just sent over this proposal from Silver Cove. Apparently, they are offering a massive discount for corporate groups right now. Something about a fill-the-gap promotion for the end of the quarter. Mason froze. I saw his eyes dart to the screen. For a second, he looked like a deer caught in headlights, terrified that I had discovered his secret sanctuary. But then I saw the gears turning. He saw the pricing table I had doctored. Let me see that, he said, trying to sound casual. He leaned over my shoulder. Wow. That rate is incredibly low for an oceanfront property. I know, I said innocently. I was just thinking, didn't you say Heliocore was looking to do a team reset, Since you have been there before, you know the layout. It might make you look good if you bring a deal like this to Richard. The bait was taken. Mason's vanity was his Achilles' heel. He could not resist the chance to be the hero who saved the department budget while simultaneously returning to the scene of his affair. Send me that deck, he said, standing up and pacing. I can probably leverage my previous relationship with them to get even more perks. Richard has been stressing about the budget for the Heal the Team retreat. This could be perfect. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard Mason on a call in the hallway. Yeah, Richard. Look, my wife has an in with the events director there, Mason was saying, his voice booming with unearned confidence. I can secure the executive wing for 20% less than we budgeted. It is a no-brainer. We need this, especially with the compliance rumors floating around. It will be good for morale. I smiled into my mug. Compliance rumors. That was Levi's handiwork. According to the encrypted updates I received from Levi, the anonymous package had landed on the desk of the chief compliance officer at Heliocore on Monday morning. It was not the full nuclear option yet, just a concern regarding irregularities in travel expenses, accompanied by the receipt for the romantic spa package dated on a day Mason had claimed to be in meetings. It was enough. Levi told me that HR had quietly frozen the reimbursement approval for that trip, flagging it for further review, but instead of pulling Mason in immediately, they had decided to let the retreat proceed. In the corporate world, give a man enough rope, and he will hang himself. They wanted to see if he would do it again. They were treating the retreat not as a vacation, but as a live audit. By Friday, reservations were confirmed. Heliocore Strategies would be spending 3 days and 2 nights at Silver Cove Resort, and because Mason had sold me as the connection, I was effectively deputized as an unofficial liaison for the event logistics. Babe, you are a lifesaver, Mason told me that night, looking more stressed than I had ever seen him. He was rubbing his temples. I told Richard you would help coordinate the media stuff with the resort, so I can focus on the content. I have to nail this presentation. The atmosphere at the office is weird. People are whispering. Don't worry, I soothed him. I will handle the fun stuff. You just focus on your strategy. The fun stuff was last night's gala dinner. The agenda listed it as celebrating our journey, a visual retrospective. I opened my correspondence with the resort's media team. Subject Heliocore Gala. Slideshow assets. Hi team. Please find attached the folder Heliocore team photos for the Saturday night gala loop. As discussed, We want this to be a surprise for the team, celebrating their hard work and special moments at the resort. Please intersperse the professional headshots with the candid shots I have included. The client wants a storytelling vibe. Start with the corporate logo, then transition into the personal moments. Thanks. Adeline, I dragged and dropped the files. File 1, HelioCore logo. PNG, File TO2, Team Group Shot LinkedIn. JPG, File THOW3, Mason Tessa Infinity Pool Kiss. JPG, File 4, Richard CEO Headshot. JPG, File Mason Tessa Bed Champagne. JPG, File 6, Tessa Selfie Bathrobe. JPG, File 7, Text Screenshot Meeting is boring. PNG. I watched the upload bar fill green. It was perverse, in a way, using their own love story template against them. The resort staff, bless their hearts, likely wouldn't check every single photo closely, assuming they were just typical drunken party shots from a previous trip. Or, if they did notice, they would assume it was approved. After all, the request came from the client's coordinator. As the departure date crept closer, the tension in our house became suffocating. Mason was not sleeping. He was constantly checking his phone, jumping at every notification. I sat in the guest room one evening, monitoring the mirrored text logs. Mason, did you erase iCloud, Tessa? Yes, I deleted everything, but Levi is acting strange. He is too quiet. Do you think he knows Mason? He is a history teacher. Tessa, he lives in books. He does not know anything. Just act normal at the retreat. We are colleagues. Nothing else. Tessa, what about HR? Sarah from compliance asked me for my flight receipts from May again. She said the file was corrupt. Mason, it is just a glitch. Stop panicking. If we look guilty, we are guilty. Just smile and drink the wine. Just smile and drink the wine, I repeated to myself, watching the text bubble appear on my screen. It was his mantra: deny, deflect, and assume everyone else is too stupid to catch on. The night before we were scheduled to leave, I packed my suitcase. I chose my outfits carefully, a sharp navy blazer, a silk dress that made me look formidable, and then I went to the dining room cabinet. I took the original Silver Cove Couples Retreat album. I ran my hand over the embossed cover one last time. It was heavy, a tangible brick of evidence in a digital world. I walked back to the bedroom and placed it at the very bottom of my suitcase, beneath my shoes and my toiletries. Mason was sitting on the edge of the bed, frantically typing on his laptop. He was tweaking his slide deck for the 100th time. Do you think this font is authoritative enough? He asked without looking up. I need to project stability. Leadership. I looked at his slide. It was titled, Transparency and Trust, the Pillars of HelioCore's Future. The irony was so thick I could taste it. It looks perfect, Mason, I said. It looks exactly like the kind of presentation that changes a career, he sighed, closing the laptop. I just want this weekend to be over. Once we get through this gala, everything will go back to normal. I can feel it. I am sure it will be a turning point, I agreed. I zipped up my suitcase. The sound was loud in the quiet room, like a body bag being closed. Did you pack your swim trunks? I asked. Yeah, he grunted. Though I doubt I will have time to swim. I am going to be working in the room the whole time. Oh, I think you should make time, I said, walking to the window and looking out at the dark street. You never know when it will be your last chance to enjoy the water. He didn't answer. He was already back on his phone, likely sending one last reassurance to Tessa that their secrets were safe, buried in deleted folders and corrupted files. He had no idea that the most dangerous file was not on his computer, but sitting in the inbox of the resort's audiovisual technician, queued up and ready to play. Tomorrow, we will fly to paradise, and for Mason, it would be a one-way trip. The charter bus carrying the executive team of HelioCore Strategies hissed to a halt in front of the grand portico of Silver Cove Resort. The air smelled of sea salt, jasmine, and expensive sunscreen. As the doors opened, Mason stood up, straightening his blazer, and gestured for me to precede him down the aisle. "Everyone, welcome to paradise," Mason announced to the bus, his voice booming with the confidence of a tour guide. "And you can thank my wife, Adeline, for pulling the strings to get us the executive wing. She used her connections to save the department budget." A chorus of appreciative murmurs and applause washed over me. I smiled, a practiced, modest curve of the lips, and descended the steps. The irony was sharp enough to cut glass. I had indeed pulled strings, but not to save their budget. I had brought them here to witness an execution. We gathered in the lobby, a cathedral of marble and teak. That was when I saw her. Tessa Marino walked in from the second bus, the one carrying the junior staff. She was wearing a cream-colored sundress that fluttered around her knees, and around her neck hung a delicate gold pendant shaped like a sunburst. My breath caught for a split second. I knew that necklace. I had seen a close-up photo of it in the mirrored text logs 3 weeks ago. Mason had texted her, "I saw this in the window and thought of you. Wear it for me." She spotted Mason, and her eyes lit up before darting quickly to me. She composed herself, walking over with a professional smile plastered on her face. "Adeline, right?" she said, extending a hand. "I am Tessa. We met at the Christmas party. It is so nice to see you again." I took her hand. It was soft, manicured. "Tessa," I said, my voice warm and welcoming. "Mason speaks so highly of your work, and that necklace is stunning. It really suits you." She flinched, just a tiny microscopic twitch of her eyelid. She touched the pendant instinctively. "Oh, thank you. It was a gift from my grandmother." "She has excellent taste," I said, releasing her hand. We moved to the terrace for the welcome lunch. The seating was open, but the politics were rigid. The executives sat near the ocean view. The support staff clustered near the buffet. Mason made a show of pulling out my chair at the table with Richard, the CEO, and Sarah, the head of human resources. Mason was careful. He sat with his back to Tessa's table. He engaged Richard in a loud conversation about quarterly projections and market synergy. To the naked eye, he was the model employee, but I had my phone resting on the white tablecloth, concealed behind my napkin. I had the mirroring app open, while Mason nodded at Richard's story about golf. His phone, which was vibrating silently in his pocket, was active. "Mason, you look incredible in that dress. It is taking everything I have not to look at you." "Tessa, the view is nice, but I would rather be looking at the ceiling of room 412. Mason, patience. Lunch is almost over." "Pool Tessa. Is it safe, Mason?" "Later. She is here. I have to play the doting husband for an hour." I watched the text bubbles appear on my screen, then looked up at Mason. He was laughing at Richard's joke, his hand resting possessively on my shoulder. The disconnect between the man touching me and the man texting her was absolute. "Adeline, you are not eating," Sarah from HR said. She was a sharp-eyed woman who noticed everything. "Just enjoying the view." "Sarah," I replied. "It is rare to see Mason so relaxed. He works so hard." Sarah's eyes flickered to Mason, then back to me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She made a small note in the leather-bound planner she kept next to her plate. After lunch, we went to our suite to unpack. It was the same room type Mason had stayed in with Tessa, the oceanfront king. The familiarity with which he moved around the space was nauseating. He knew exactly which switch controlled the fan and where the minibar was hidden. There was a knock on the door. Mason was closer. He opened it. A young man wearing a Silver Cove polo shirt stood there, holding an iPad. "Good afternoon. Mr. Reed," the employee said cheerfully. "I have the preview for the gala slideshow you requested. The media team wanted to make sure the sequencing was correct before we lock it in for tomorrow." My heart stopped. The staff member was holding the iPad out to Mason. Mason frowned, looking confused. "Slideshow, I did not request a preview. I thought the marketing team handled that." He reached for the device. If he looked at it, if he saw the first slide, it was over. He would destroy the evidence, cancel the gala, and spin a lie before dinner. I crossed the room in 3 strides. "Oh, That must be for me, I said, stepping between Mason and the staff member. I snatched the iPad from the young man's hands with a grip that was almost aggressive. I told the events coordinator I wanted to check the technical specs. The resolution was giving us trouble earlier. I turned to Mason, forcing a laugh. You know how obsessed I am with image quality. Honey, you focus on your speech. I do not want you worrying about pixels. Mason shrugged, losing interest immediately. Right. You handle the creative stuff. I have to hop on a call. He turned back into the room. I stepped into the hallway. Pulling the door partially closed behind me, I watched the terrified staffer. The slideshow is perfect, I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. Do not show him again. It is a surprise. Do you understand? A surprise for the team. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. The boy stammered. I handed the iPad back and closed the door. Leaning against it, my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. That was too close. By 3 that afternoon, Mason was going to the gym. I knew exactly where he was going. From our balcony. I watched him walk down the path, not toward the fitness center, but toward the secluded cove on the north side of the property. 5 minutes later, Tessa followed, wearing a large sun hat and sunglasses. They thought they were invisible. They were not. 2 decks below, on the terrace of the coffee shop, sat a woman reading a Kindle. It was Sarah from HR. She wasn't reading. She was watching them over the top of her sunglasses. She checked her watch, noted the time, and typed something into her phone. And further down, near the towel stand, was a man in khaki shorts and a plain gray t-shirt. He looked like any other tourist, chatting with a guy who looked like hotel security. It was Levi. I had texted him our room number and schedule. He was supposed to be invisible, but seeing him there gave me a surge of grim solidarity. He wasn't looking at the ocean. He was looking at the path where his wife had just disappeared. He raised a hand to adjust his cap. A subtle signal. I see them. The trap was closing from all sides. That evening, the night before the gala, Mason was manic. He spent an hour in the shower scrubbing away the scent of the afternoon, I assumed, and then stood before the full-length mirror in his boxers, practicing his speech. We have faced challenges, he declared to his reflection, making forceful hand gestures. But transparency is our shield. Integrity is our compass. When I look at this team, I see the future. He turned to me, where I was sitting up in bed reading a book. What do you think? Addy too much, or just enough gravitas? It is powerful, Mason, I said. Really, it sounds like you truly believe it. He grinned, his ego swelling. I think this is it. Richard gave me a nod today. If this retreat goes well, I am a lock for the regional vice president role. That comes with a 40% raise. We can finally redo the kitchen. We certainly could, I said. Get some sleep, babe, he said, climbing into bed and kissing me on the forehead. Tomorrow is a big day, a career-defining day. He was asleep in 5 minutes. I waited until his breathing was heavy and rhythmic. Then, I slipped out of bed, grabbed my own iPad, and walked out onto the balcony. The ocean was black and restless, the waves crashing against the rocks below. The air was thick with humidity. I sat on the lounge chair, the same type of chair where he had posed with her in the photos, and opened the file I had finalized with the resort team earlier. Project HelioCore Gala. I pressed play. The first slide was the HelioCore logo. Crisp and professional. I swiped. The second slide appeared. It was a photo of Mason and Tessa. They were standing in the water, his arms wrapped around her, their foreheads touching. The intimacy was undeniable. It was not a photo of colleagues. It was a photo of lovers. The caption, which I had instructed the resort to overlay in an elegant script, read Silver Cove, the special client conference of Mason and Tessa. I stared at the image. In the dark, the screen light lit my face. I felt no sadness. The grief had burned off days ago, leaving only a cold, hard clarity. He said he was in meetings all day, I whispered to the sound of the waves. I looked back at the sliding glass door. where the silhouette of my husband lay sleeping in the expensive sheets. "Well, Mason," I said softly, closing the iPad cover with a snap. "Tomorrow. You are finally going to have a meeting where everyone is paying attention. The only problem is, I wrote the agenda, and you are not going to like the minutes." The gala morning arrived with a deceptive calm. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, the kind that resorts put on postcards to promise eternal paradise. But at the breakfast table, the atmosphere was brittle. I sat across from Mason, sipping my coffee. He was scrolling through his emails on his phone, his thumb moving with a jerky, nervous rhythm. Suddenly, he stopped. The color drained from his face so fast, it looked like a physical blow. He stared at the screen. I knew what he was reading. Levi had told me the notification would go out at 8 o'clock sharp. "Everything okay?" I asked, buttering a piece of toast with deliberate slowness. Mason swallowed hard. "Yeah, just weird. HR sent an email. They want a brief discussion regarding travel expenses and strategic alignment on Monday morning. Mandatory attendance." "That sounds standard," I said, not looking up. "Probably just end-of-year budget planning." "Yeah," he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. "Standard. Probably just a formality." He shoved the phone into his pocket, but a moment later, it vibrated against the table. He ignored it. It vibrated again, and again. "Someone really wants to reach you," I noted. "It is probably just spam," he said, his jaw tight. It was not spam. It was Tessa, across the resort, in her own room. She was staring at a text message that had just landed on her screen. It was from Levi. "Tonight. Remember to smile for the camera. I will be watching every slide." I could imagine her panic. She would be calling Mason, desperate for reassurance, desperate to know if Levi was bluffing. But Mason, sitting next to his CEO and his wife, could not answer. He was trapped in the open, forced to perform normalcy while the ground beneath him turned to quicksand. 2 hours before the event, I went to the ballroom to do a final tech check. The room was being transformed. Round tables were draped in silver linens. Centerpieces of white orchids and driftwood were being arranged. At the back of the room, the audiovisual technician, a young man named Kyle, was setting up the projector. "Hi, Kyle," I said, walking up to the control booth. "Ready for the big night." "All set. Mrs. Reed," he said. "I have Mr. Reed's presentation loaded on the main laptop." "Actually," I said, producing a sleek silver USB drive from my pocket, "there has been a slight change in the run of show. We are going to start with the team slideshow to warm up the crowd. It is on this drive. File name, Heliocore Gala Final." I handed it to him. "And for Mr. Reed's speech," I continued. "He gets nervous if the tech fails. Can we load his deck onto the backup laptop? Just keep it on standby. We will switch over to him manually after the video ends." "Sure thing," Kyle said, plugging my drive into the main system. He clicked the file. The first slide, the Heliocore logo appeared on his monitor. "Looks good." "Perfect," I said. "And Kyle, whatever happens, do not stop the video once it starts. The music is synced to the images. If you pause it, it ruins the emotional impact." "Got it," he promised. No pausing. I left, leaving the loaded gun in his hands. At 6:30, the guests began to arrive. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the low hum of corporate networking. Mason found me near the entrance. He looked immaculate in his charcoal suit, but up close, I could see the sweat beading on his upper lip. He grabbed my elbow too tight. "Adeline," he whispered, pulling me toward a decorative pillar. "Be honest with me. Yesterday, did you see anyone? Anyone who looked out of place?" I looked him in the eye. "Like who?" "Mason." "I do not know," he hissed. "I just have this feeling. Sarah from HR has been staring at me all day, and Tessa says she thought she saw someone familiar in the lobby." "You are spiraling," I said, my voice cool and steady. "This is pre-game jitters. You are about to give the biggest speech of your life. Of course you are paranoid. Focus on the work. Mason, Focus on the transparency you preached about last night. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Right. You are right. I just need to get through this. Go get a drink, I advised. You need to relax. As he left, I saw the doors open. Tessa walked in. She looked terrified. Her face was pale beneath her makeup, and she kept glancing over her shoulder. She made a beeline for the exit, clearly intending to claim illness and flee. But before she could reach the glass doors, Richard, the CEO, entered her path. "Tessa," Richard boomed, holding a glass of wine. "Just the person I wanted to see. I heard you were instrumental in the data analysis for Mason's deck. You must sit at the main table with us tonight. We want to celebrate with the whole team." Tessa froze. She looked at the door. Then Richard. "I am not feeling very well." "Richard," she stammered, "I think I might have a migraine." "Nonsense," Richard said jovially, placing a hand on her shoulder that was heavy with command. "It is just an hour. Have some water. We need everyone here. It is a big night for the company." She was trapped. She nodded weakly and let him guide her toward the front of the room, right into the line of fire. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text from Naomi. "I just got the internal flag from my contact. HR and security are stationed in the private dining room next to the ballroom. They have the flight logs and the spa receipts printed out. As soon as the presentation ends, they are coming in to escort Mason and Tessa for immediate questioning." "You are clear," I typed back. "Clear, counting down." I walked into the ballroom. The lights were dimmed to a warm, golden glow. Waiters were weaving through the tables, pouring Pinot Noir. I sat next to Mason at the head table. Tessa was seated 3 chairs down, staring at her empty plate as if it were an open grave. Mason leaned over to me. "I think I'm going to open with a joke," he whispered. "Break the ice." "I think the ice is going to break itself," I said. He did not hear me. He was too busy adjusting his tie, checking his watch, and smiling at the CEO. He looked like a man on the precipice of a promotion. He had no idea he was standing on a trapdoor. The room quieted as the resort's event coordinator took the stage. She smiled brightly into the microphone. "Good evening, HelioCore Strategies," she announced. "We are so honored to host you at Silver Cove. We know you have a lot of serious business to discuss tonight, but before we get to Mr. Reed's presentation, we wanted to start with a little surprise." Mason sat up straighter, a confused smile touching his lips. He looked at me. "Surprise?" I reached out and patted his hand. My skin was cool. His was clammy. "Just watch," I whispered. "We put together a special slideshow." The coordinator continued, sweeping her hand toward the massive screen behind her. "A collection of memories to celebrate the journey that brought you all here. Please, enjoy." The ballroom lights dropped to near darkness. The only illumination came from the glowing exit signs and the massive white screen. Mason relaxed. He leaned back in his chair, taking a sip of wine. He expected stock photos of team-building exercises. He expected shots of people high-fiving in conference rooms. The music started. It was a romantic, acoustic ballad, the default track for the love story package. The first slide faded in. The HelioCore logo. There was polite applause. Then, the transition effect rippled across the screen, dissolving the logo into the first photograph. The room went silent. It was not a team photo. It was Mason and Tessa. They were on the beach at sunset, bathed in golden light. Mason's hands were on her waist. Her head was thrown back in laughter. It was intimate. It was beautiful. And it was undeniably, catastrophically incriminating. Beneath them, in elegant, swirling gold letters, the caption read, "Silver Cove, the special client conference of Mason and Tessa." I felt Mason's body go rigid next to me. He stopped breathing. The glass of wine in his hand tilted dangerously. "What?" he choked out. "What is?" But the slide did not stop. It was set to a 5-second loop. The image dissolved. The next one appeared. Mason and Tessa in the infinity pool, kissing under the fireworks. I looked at Tessa. She had covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with horror. staring at the screen as if she were watching her own funeral. I looked at Richard. The CEO's smile had vanished. He was squinting at the screen, his confusion rapidly hardening into realization. I looked at the screen. The third slide was fading in. Just wait, I thought, taking a sip of my own water. The text messages are next. The first slide hit the screen with a cheerful chime. The HelioCore logo, bright and blue, floated above a stock image of a handshake. A ripple of polite applause moved through the room. Beside me, Mason let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since we boarded the bus. I could practically hear his internal monologue reassuring him that it was just a montage of team-building exercises and group dinners. Then, the transition dissolved. The second slide appeared. It was not a group shot. It was Mason and Tessa. They were walking hand in hand along the shoreline, silhouetted against a bleeding orange sun. The caption, stylized in the resort's signature romantic script, read Mason and Tessa, Sunset Cruise, Silver Cove Resort. The applause died instantly. It was not a gradual fade. It was a sudden, violent strangulation of sound. Somewhere in the back of the room, a spoon clamored against a wine glass, the noise ringing out like a gunshot in the silence. The screen wiped to the next image. Mason lifts Tessa out of the water at the edge of the infinity pool, water droplets suspended in the air around them like diamonds, both of them laughing with their mouths wide open. Then, a photo of the two of them on a king-sized bed, wearing nothing but white towels, a bucket of champagne chilling on the nightstand between them. These were the images the resort sold as adorable couple memories. In that room was forensic evidence. I did not look at the screen. I looked at the audience. Richard, the CEO, had gone from a flash of wine-induced warmth to a sickly, ashen gray. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes darting from the screen to Mason and back again. Sarah from Human Resources did not look surprised. She looked vindicated. She gripped her leather notebook with white-knuckled intensity, her pen already moving, documenting the visual proof of gross misconduct and misappropriation of funds. 3 seats down. Tessa brought both hands to her face, covering her mouth as if to hold back a scream. Her chair scraped loudly against the parquet floor as she recoiled, but she had nowhere to go. Standing in the shadows near the service entrance, Levi watched. He stood perfectly still, his arms crossed, his face an unreadable mask of grim satisfaction. He did not blink, and Mason had turned to stone. His hand was still gripping the stem of his wine glass, but his knuckles were stark white. He was staring at the screen, his pupils blown wide, unable to comprehend how his secret paradise had been transported into his professional purgatory. The slideshow continued, but now, the resort's inspirational quotes have been replaced. I watched as the overlays I had carefully uploaded appeared over the images. A photo of Mason kissing Tessa in the hot tub faded in. Superimposed over the water was a screenshot of a text message, blown up to be legible from the back of the room. Mason, I am in meetings all day. Babe, do not wait up. The slide changed. Mason and Tessa toasting with cocktails. Tessa, does she suspect anything, Mason? She is naive. She trusts me 100%. Do not worry. The text hovered there, glowing in the dark room, branded across their smiling faces. 100%. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. The air in the room was thick, suffocating, slowly, mechanically. Mason turned his head to look at me. I was sitting with my back straight, my hands folded calmly in my lap. I did not look at him. I kept my eyes fixed on the screen, a small ghost of a smile playing on my lips, on the table in front of me, right next to the floral centerpiece. I had placed the original Silver Cove album. It was open to the centerfold, the page where they clinked glasses under the caption, "Cheers to Secret Meetings." The music faded. The screen went black. The lights did not come back up immediately. In the heavy silence, the resort's event coordinator returned to the stage. She looked confused, sensing the tension but not understanding the context. She laughed nervously into the microphone. "Oh, my apologies if the slideshow focused a bit too heavily on one couple. That was the love story package the client requested from their last stay. So the algorithm must have prioritized those tagged images. It was the final nail. Sarah from HR stood up. The scraping of her chair was the loudest sound in the world. She walked around the table, flanked by two men from resort security, whom I recognized as the ones Levi had been speaking to earlier. "Mason, Tessa," Sarah said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. "Please come with us. We need to have an immediate discussion regarding your expense reports and code of conduct violations. Now." Mason tried to stand, but his legs seemed to fail him. He grabbed the table for support. Before he could turn away, I reached into my purse. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. I placed it gently on his placemat, right on top of his linen napkin. "What is this?" he whispered. His voice was a ruin, a rasp of dry leaves. "Open it," I said. He opened the flap with shaking fingers. Inside was a copy of the divorce petition I had filed that morning. Behind it was the deed to the house, now solely in my name, signed and notarized. Behind that were the new bank statements showing his access removed from our joint assets, and on top, a single handwritten note on yellow legal paper. I watched him read it. "You told me you were in meetings all day." I took the liberty of recording the minutes. This time, everyone got to see the presentation. "How long?" he asked. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the suit small, scared, and utterly defeated. "How long have you known?" "Since the first lie," I said, my voice clear and cold. "Since Silver Cove sent a souvenir album to your legal wife, instead of your retreat partner." "Mr. Reed," the guard said, approaching. "Please." Mason looked at Richard, but the CEO turned his back, pouring himself more wine. He looked at his colleagues, but they studied their shoes. He looked at Tessa, who was already being led out the side door, weeping silently. He stood up. He left the ballroom, flanked by security, his career and his marriage ending in the same walk of shame. I did not watch him go. I stood up, smoothed the front of my dress, and picked up my clutch. I walked out the back doors, onto the terrace, and down the stone steps to the beach. The wind was picking up, whipping my hair across my face. The ocean roared, indifferent to the human wreckage I had just left behind. I took my phone and dialed Valerie. "It is done," I said when she answered. "Did he see the show?" Valerie asked. "Everyone saw the show," I replied. "Activate everything, change the locks, notify the banks. It is over." That night, I did not sleep in the guest room. I slept in the master suite, in the center of the massive bed where Mason had once lain with her. I listened to the waves crash against the shore. I reached for the original photo album one last time. I flipped through the pages, the sunset toast, the infinity pool, the fake rings. They didn't hurt anymore. They were just data points. They were just historical records of a bad investment I had finally liquidated. I closed the heavy cover. I walked over to the recycling bin in the corner of the room and dropped the book inside. It landed with a dull thud. "Meeting adjourned. Mason," I whispered into the darkness. "The minutes have been sent to the appropriate parties." Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment down below and tell me where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts on Adeline's revenge. Don't forget to subscribe to the Zoe Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.